Alrighty, howdy neighbors and welcome back to our life. Last time we found out that our real family is dead. So let's go to dinner. Sunlight shone through the windows as you sat in your living room, your home phone pressed to your ear. Cove was on the other end. What up, Cove? That voice. Woo! We're ready to hit any day now. It was shaping up to be an ordinary day like any other, till Cove had called unexpectedly. He sounded unusually nervous greeting you. You listened silently as he kept talking. His words stilted. So I was just wondering, do you want to come over to my house for dinner tonight? Oh, fuck, yes I do! I would never reject that from you, Cove. The question came out strangely, almost as if he had rehearsed it a few times beforehand. Your eyes widened a little. You hadn't expected this to be the reason behind the call. Would love to. It was, huh? No. I feel like Cove was still had more to say, but you interrupted him. Whoops. Cool. Well, he stumbled for a bit, trying to gather his thoughts again. My mom and dad, they really want you to be here, if your parents don't have a problem with it. They asked me to ask you. You took a moment to think. Dinner at home would be quite uneventful today. If you really wanted, you could go to Cove instead. George spoke up again, breaking your thought train. His voice was softer than before. Also, I want you to be there too. Can you? Come over, I mean. Yeah, I can come. Thanks, Viola. I'll let them know when I can. You sounded notably relieved at your response. Was you coming over for dinner today that serious? He spoke to you for a little while longer to explain the time to come over and other details, then hung up. And that was that. For now, anyway. Soon enough, the sun dipped out from the sky and evening came. It was time for you to head to Cove's house. After letting Elizabeth know you were leaving, she didn't look away from the TV, just grunted. You made a small journey across the street. You knocked a couple of times on the heavy door to their condo. As you waited for an answer, you found yourself contemplating being a guest while both of Cove's parents were there. It did make you curious. You wondered why they decided to invite you out of the blue. Maybe you'd find out later tonight. You didn't get too much time with your thoughts, though. The door opened soon enough. Cove's mom, Kyra, stood in the frame, smiling warmly at you.
Come on.
Hey, Viola. Welcome. Please, come in. She opened the door wider and moved to make room. You stepped aside, allowing her to shut the door behind you. Thank you for coming over. I know it was kind of last second. It's alright. Thank you for inviting me. Of course, just make yourself at home. It's not my home, but I've been given permission to say that. Hey, Viola. Welcome to our humble abode. You jerked your head toward the sound of Mr. Holden's voice. He waved at you briefly from the kitchen, and you turned back with a large spoon in hand. Hope you're hungry, because I'm whipping up a lot of tasty stuff. True to his word, you heard something sizzling on the stove. You closed your eyes and inhaled. It smelled spicy and savory. While Mr. Holden was busy and Cove nowhere in sight, it was just you and Kyra. She gave you a wry smile. He sure is. Well, I've been barred from cooking the entire time I'm staying here. Can you believe that? She nudged you with an elbow. Mr. Holden scoffed good-naturedly, then spoke from over his shoulder. You're on vacation, Kyra. You need to accept that already. She yelled back, amusement obvious on her face and in her tone. People still cook when they're on vacation. Everybody's gotta eat. It's not like I'm some celebrity who can go out for every meal or hire a private chef.
Sorry.
Well, in this house, you're a VIP. Kyra smiled and shook her head quietly. Then she turned to face you once more.
Wow.
Sorry about the Viola. Here I was trying to strike up conversation with you, and Cliff just had to butt in. I did not butt in! She eyed him, chuckling in disbelief. He wasn't exactly disproving her point with that. Kyra leaned over to whisper to me. It's okay, he likes to be included. But since Clifford insisted on cooking all by himself, he'll have to wait. It two of us could chat. Her next question continued to be said in hushed tone, just to be safe. So, how are you doing? I'm good. Kara didn't seem to convince of your awkward phrasing, but she nodded anyway. She opened her mouth to say something more, but some lightly pounding footsteps caught your attention. You checked to see Cove emerging from the hall a few moments later. He must have heard all the commotion and left his room to see what was going on. He quickly took shock of the situation. Viola, you made it! Thanks for coming! His voice was unnaturally loud, as if he thought you weren't going to be able to hear him from where you were, only a few feet away. Hello, Cove. He gave her a shy wave, and then felt a little stupid. Put your arm back down. It was when you left away from Cove that you spotted his parents watching the two of you interact. Cove noticed their stares too, meeting them with narrowed eyes. Are we having dinner now? Not yet, bud. I'm still cooking. Alright, I'm gonna go back to my room. As he turned to leave, he bent his head to the side to face you. You coming? The question was quiet, but you heard it clearly. He smiled, pleased that he asked, and nodded in affirmation. Cove turned fully and made his way down the hall. Have fun, you two. We'll call you when food's ready to go. With that, you followed after Cove. The two of you made your way down the hall. Going over to Cove's room was a standard occurrence nowadays. First time, he visited his before, but only rarely. You got to the door first, opening and stepping inside. You joined him. He has his own seashell collection. That's awesome. There was a mat on the floor in front of the door. As you stepped over the threshold, you felt the crunch of sand beneath your feet. Sensation was nothing new to you, of course. Cove constantly came back to his room covered in sand, not bothering to clean himself off at the front door, and it got all over his personal space. That's just how it was. A little bit of a mess. I haven't heard Mr. Holden ever scold him for it, and not like your moms would have if you'd done it. You can stay wherever you want. Cove himself took a seat at the edge of the large bed, looking like the picture of comfort, and left you to decide. Touched Cove on the bed. Cove smiled as made yourself at home beside him. You grinned back. The silence growing, your gaze began to drift. You stared at the bright fish swimming in the tank. There were a bunch of them, floating to and fro in the open space. They stood out, sparkling against the green aquarium plants. How long have you had those fish?
Yes.
My dad bought them for me not very long ago. Very long after I moved here. It's been years now. That is a long time. Fish don't typically last that long. You peered carefully into the tank. The fish looked to be doing well. Must have taken good care of it. Most of them were small, but there was one especially big one. What are their names? I don't name them. Well, not really. Cove said an eyebrow at that. He continued his explanations sheepishly.
I mean...
Mostly I just call them things based on how they look. Squirt for the small one, a tangerine for the really orange one. That sort of thing. I've had a lot of fish. I'm not good at coming up with names. It's relatable. You don't have any pets, but you always have trouble naming your stuffed animals or whatever else. It was such a hard choice. Oh, a couple of them have other types of names. He pointed to the small orange-ish red fish. It was minding its own business away from the others. My dad named her Dreamcatcher, and that other one's Mark. Mom came up with that one. Cove smiled to himself, his eyes reflecting the glow of the tank. You let other people name your fish?
It's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. He then turned to you, tilting his head to the side. There was a considering look on his face. Do you want to name one? Can I? His smile grew a little at your interest. Sure. There's a few who don't have names right now. The newer ones. You can pick which one you want to name. He pointed at the recent questions out to you. The first one was the smallest fish in the tank. It's completely orange and zipped all over the place. running laps around the others. The second is slightly bigger and red. Its tail is dotted with black spots, which almost resembled freckles. The last fish was the biggest one. Its multicolored scales rippled under the bright light of the tank as it slowly made its way across the vast expanse. You went with this medium fish. Cove only nodded your answer when you decide for a suitable name. You watched the fish you chose closely. You did, a name eventually came to mind. Sunbeam. Cove laughed unreservedly at your choice. It was affectionate rather than insulting. We need to think like my dad. I had a sunbeam. With that, its attention moved from you to the tank. You peered fondly at it and its inhabitants. You smiled proudly at Sunbeam as it swam through the tendrils of the plants, disappearing and then reappearing soon after. You know, I'm not allowed to have pets in my house, not even fish. The corners of Cove's lips turned down at that. That doesn't sound fair. It's not like fish are gonna make a mess in your house or anything. You just gotta take care of the tank and feed them and they'll be okay. I don't mind it too much. I have to do so much for a pet. It's a lot of work and responsibility. My moms take it super seriously, and that's why they don't want to just get one. That's true. A hard conversation brought to mind a memory from years ago. It started coming out of nowhere, earning you a brief confused look from Cove. One time Elizabeth came back from playing at the beach and hid it in her room. She came down for food, but then she ran back upstairs after. So I didn't understand. Her mom left her alone at first. But that night, Mom went to her room to say goodnight and she screamed. Mom and I went over to see what was wrong. We found Lizzie with a big lizard in her arms. Rose's eyebrows rose at that and then he leaned forward in interest. Lizard? Where'd that come from? Elizabeth said she saw it half buried in the sand. Didn't know what it was. She picked it up and found out. She brought it home. She hid the lizard in her room for a whole day because she wanted to keep it. Mom and Ma were upset with her. They're worried about putting it out during the night, but she was going to have to let it go in the morning. Lizzie was really sad. She did release the lizard, but she wouldn't talk to anyone for days. When she did stop being unhappy, it was almost like it never happened. You shook your head, thinking back to that time. Elizabeth had always been stubborn, but when she was younger, she forgot grudges quickly. Now, it wasn't so easy. Cove had been quiet for most of the story, apart from the reveal of the lizard. He had a thoughtful look on his face. I can't even imagine what it'd be like having a sibling. You gave a serious thought to the statement before you told them. Your ups and downs. It's fun to have her there when she wants to be there, but Elizabeth barely feels like hanging out with me. Cove pursed his lips at the word, considering them quietly for a while. It's interesting. I think your family's cool. He didn't have much else to say. Though, while on the topic of your family, you considered your relationship with your moms, too. Go along with your moms. You had disagreements with them, but at the end of the day, you loved them and they loved you. That's all that really mattered. A thought struck you and your attention suddenly settled back on Cove. Yeah, my moms might not let Elizabeth or me have pets and stuff, but at least I never tried to... pay someone to be my friend. Oh, fuck. Not the words left your lips, you winced. Fuck. Maybe I shouldn't have tried to joke about that. Cove had been so hurt when he found out. Sure, it's been years since then, but that didn't matter. Cove tossed his head back in an overly dramatic way, sighing heavily. Almost forgot about that. Really?
No way.
No, not really. I'll never be able to forget what actually happened for the rest of my life. That's gonna humiliate me forever. Sorry about what happened. Cove took one look at your remorseful face and waved your apology off with a hand. It's okay. I mean, it's not. I'm not sad about it anymore. Just really embarrassed. Time passed, but you didn't really notice. Two of you were busy, making plans for the rest of the summer and chatting about your respective days. Eventually, you heard a muffled holler from a different part of the house. You and Cove raised your heads in unison. Time for dinner. Cove watched the firmly shut door that he had locked behind for most of the night. But he didn't make a move to get up from the bed. You could see his face, but you didn't know what expression he was wearing. Glad you came. Cove peeked back at you from the side. It's been awkward. Oh, yeah. You wish you had something nice or comforting to say to that. Hopefully, just being there for him was enough. Cove said nothing else and remained sat where he was. Now is a good time to ask him why his parents so suddenly wanted you to come over. This is the time. Do it. It hasn't been awkward for just me. Sometimes it gets like this. No one else is around. But now you're here. Huh, you hadn't considered that. This one made sense in a way. There was another shout from outside. Too muffled to actually know the words, but you can imagine what they were. Let's go. Cove finally got up, lumbering away with his shoulders sagged. You followed after him. Together, the two of you made your way back to the living room. As expected, Cove's parents were politely waiting for you at the kitchen table, beside the windows overlooking the back of the house. Food had been prepared and set. Mr. Holden beamed as you and Cove took your places. If everyone's hungry, cooked up a feast.
Yeah.
I know I am. Yeah. No mumbled a response. Wasn't nearly as upbeat as theirs. His parents didn't notice, or they pretended not to. Mr. Holden said, looked at you, grinning.
Thanks.
Let's take a moment to thank our special guest for being with us here tonight. I'm so glad that you were able to make it, Viola. On such short notice, too. I thank Cove's parents for inviting you. Thanks for inviting me.
All right.
Well, that's it. Everyone, please dig in. You can help yourself to the food. Upon his encouragement, you looked over the meal spread out in front of you. There was a large garden salad in the center, surrounded by a variety of Mexican dishes. There were lots of sides and optional sauces, too. Very happy with these options. We love Mexican food, and there were so many dishes to choose from. You're practically drooling. Your utensils of plates scraping and clicking together as the group began filling their plates. Cliff, can you pass the salsa verde? Of course.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let me just say, you really outdid yourself tonight. I'm so jealous. Jealous of what? You're cooking nothing to sneeze at, Kyra. Cove's parents made small talk, filling the silence with what seemed to be barely any effort. You weren't sure what to say, nor did you want to interrupt them by blurting something out. But without warning, Cove's parents suddenly pulled you into the small talk. Viola, do you want anything from my area of the table? Say the word and I'll hand it over. Oh, I'm good, Mr. Holden, but thank you. You should try some of the guacamole, Viola. It's been a while since I've had Cliff's, but I remember it being amazing.
Aw.
You're too kind. Everything is great, Dad, as always. Thanks, sport. Glad you think so. Cove smiled. It was genuine, even if it was strained at the corners. Brief silences interspersed the small talk. You piled some food on your plate, waiting for your turn if someone was sharing themselves a dish that you had your eye on. Once the food had been divided and things settled down, Cove's parents started talking again. Now then. Shut up and you see when you noticed that they were both looking at you.
How's it going?
How's everything been over at your house? Are your mom as well? You've been keeping busy over the summer? Or maybe you're trying to take it easy during the break. You were overwhelmed by the sudden rush of business. You were blindsided by them, your mind blank. And again, it was Mr. Holden. Maybe you should have expected this. You answered how malls were doing. Those are great. My mom took us for dessert a couple of weeks ago since her project went really well. Is that so? I'll have to congratulate you when I see her. Done over the summer. Don't know where to start, so much happened. There's so much that I've been up to since So much of it includes my family. Haven't really done much. Smart choice. Take it easy when you can. When I was your age, busy work was the furthest thing from my mind. Done. Can someone say info overboard? Viola can't keep up with everything you're throwing up. Mr. Holden winced at the gentle reprimand, and then realized how rapid-fire his questions had been. Oops, sorry about that, Viola. Guess it was a lot to take in at once, huh? Did you know, Cliff? Viola's really into writing. Mr. Holden's face lit up and he stopped eating so he could lean forward, his arms braced against the table.
Nice work.
Oh, right. Oh, that's right. Very cool. It's just a hobby. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good to do things just for fun. Everybody needs a hobby. I've been thinking about picking up wood carving myself. You couldn't tell how serious he was being about that declaration. Thanks. His parents were definitely the encouraging type, but you could already tell that much about them. It was a lonely conversation as everybody focused their attention on their respective plates. Noticed not for the first time that Cove's parents were the ones guiding the conversation. You wondered if you should break the silence this time. I'm just gonna leave it to them. I'm not fucking. I'm not dealing with it. Mr. Holden was the one who spoke up, as he had his son before turning to you with an easy grin. Speaking of hobbies, Cove's been playing some tennis this summer. He and Kyra kept hitting the court together. Who would have guessed? You had already known that, since Cove is so open with you. But it's interesting to hear his parents' perspective on it. The rest of the day continued just like that, with light conversation as you ate your meals. Eventually, all the dishes on the kitchen table were pretty much gone. Kyra set down her fork and rested her arms at her sides, letting loose a satisfied sigh. The plate was completely empty.
Thanks.
That was delish. Thank you for your culinary creations, Cliff. Mr. Holden was like a flower soaking up the rays of the sun. He beamed, flattered by the praise. She tried to eat too much, even though it was so good. It was good to completely stuff yourself full of food, so you held yourself back. Cove successfully kept his presence to a minimal through the full meal. He was slumped over, even now, toying with silverware. His parents practically only talked to you. Most attempts to entice him and the conversation failed. It wasn't typical for him to say so little. He at least tried to participate. You didn't get much time to contemplate Cove's situation because your attention was taken by Mr. Holden, pointedly clearing his voice. Not to sound like a broken record, but thanks for coming, Viola. I'm glad we finally got the chance to have you over for a real dinner.
What?
What? Did I hear that right? This is the first time Viola has ever had dinner here? Why in the world haven't you invited her over sooner? I was always the one going over to Viola's house until now. I mean, how was I supposed to reject the generous offers of the Bell family to host my kid? Kara shook her head, but in an amused smile, she was sporting told you that she wasn't actually mad. This guy, honestly. The three of you looked at Cove in unison, a small sound being more than enough to get the focus on him after his silence. But now he'd stopped fiddling with his fork.
I mean...
Would it be alright for Viola to stay over? Like, for the night? Because he's stuck into my house! He shot you a shy glance, then smiling a little. If you're cool with that. Mr. Holden's shoulders stiffened. Oh my god, the look on the parent's face. He sat up straighter, eyes darted back and forth between you and Cove. His mouth opened when a peep came out. You've never seen Cove's dad say no to him before. But this was different than the usual request. It wasn't so simple Mr. Holden was lost. And Cove's mom reached out and took hold of his shirt collar. She pulled him closer. She glanced between the two before leaning in and bringing up a hand in front of their faces. Two adults whispered seriously to each other. Cove's eyes opened wider. He leaned forward as if that would help him overhear his parents' conversation. Mr. Holden kept gesturing his hands, while Kyra made sure he didn't get too far away with all his movements. Every now and then, both of them would watch you and Cove out of the corner of their eyes. It didn't seem like they were fighting to you. It looked more like some kind of tiny sports team was having a private huddle. After a bit, they broke the group up and moved back to sit properly in their chairs. You snuck a look at Cove. He stared at them expectantly. You were eager to hear their verdict, too. Well, Kara and I, think it should be fine. But, he lifted a finger dramatically, his brows raising as he met Cove's gaze, then your own. We'll have to talk with Viola's parents to make sure they're comfortable with it. If they are, we can arrange for a sleepover to happen on a different night when everyone is more prepared. Viola's folks don't like the idea, there's nothing we could do. He finished the mini speech with a wide shrug with his full arms. He also checked out Kyra from the corner of his eye and gave her a crooked smile. He nodded approvingly and grinned back. You thought you saw her give him a thumbs up, but her hand was partially covered by the table. They looked so pleased with themselves with the answer, but they just passed the actual decision on whether it's okay or not to someone else, namely your parents. If this was a sports game, they would have already put the ball away. Cove hung his head, deflated. He had been hoping you could stay over today, for some hypothetical time in the future. Imagine! Heard about it too. Cove and you sulked as a set, neither able to muster the enthusiasm to find the bright side in all this disappointment. He stared at his lap, an impressive frown on his lips. After that, dinner finally came to an end. Mr. Holden stood up at the table and began collecting empty plates. Cove was asked to help out, which he did with a little fuss. Kyra tried to lend a hand as well, but Mr. Holden didn't let her. It seemed like she was barred from cleaning as well as cooking. You weren't allowed to chip in either, since you were there as a declared guest of honor. Since the meal was over, the night wasn't. It looked like you weren't going home just yet after all. You were asked to wait on the couch. While Cove and his dad were cleaning up the mess, Kyra disappeared down the hall after shooting you a wink. It was a bit strange, sitting by yourself while everyone else had something to do. Luckily, you weren't alone for too long. After a couple minutes, Cove's mom returned with a deck of cards in hand. She strolled to the table confidently while shuffling. So, who's up for a few rounds? Cove and his dad looked over their shoulders at the question. They were mutually intrigued by the cards in her hands. She beamed at their expressions and stepped further into the living room. Ignoring the couches, she sat cross-legged on the floor by the coffee table. She looked at you and gestured to the space beside her, smiling invitingly. You accepted and followed her lead. The living room carpet was soft, though the hardwood underneath was definitely still be felt. Kyra did an overhand shuffle while she waited for the others to finish their tasks. The smile had yet to leave her lips.
Great.
This is gonna be good. You were nervous. You got through dinner alright, but you didn't know how the rest of the evening would go. It didn't take much longer for Cove and his dad to wrap things up enough to call it good. Cove's dad appeared first, followed closely behind Cove. Mr. Holden rubbed his hands together with anticipation. Alright, I'm ready. He took a seat across from you on the floor, and you noticed that Cove hadn't joined him. He went straight down the hall instead without a word. You stared on, confused, as he disappeared through his bedroom door. Cove's parents didn't look concerned by the stunt. Kyra nonchalantly split the deck of cards into two and ruffled the halves together while offering an explanation of sorts. Cove doesn't keep his wallet with him when he's at home. He puts it away. What? I didn't bring that? What the fuck? Cove quickly returned to the living room, a black wallet in his hand. He had took the place for the table with the rest of you. He blinked as Cove unzipped his wallet. Do you bet real money when you play cards with your family? While you sat there, your hands idle in your lap, the three shot looks at one another and size each other up.
Yeah.
That's right. $5 per round per person, winner takes all. Go big or go home. Oh, are you planning on kicking Viola to the curb? Or do you intend on donating to the guest of honor's pot, Mr. High Roller? Mr. Mr. Holden narrowed his eyes and leaned back against the side of the couch, completely at ease.
No worries.
If Viola wants to play, I'll fund her way in. Don't you worry about it. He rested an arm across the top of a knee that he propped up. Cove's dad was acting slick in a way you'd never seen before. Pretty appealing. Feels awkward. If you'd known beforehand, you would have grabbed some money that you had stashed away. Or just something to prepare for this. You can let me play for Viola, she's my friend. Mr. Holden grinned with a chuckle.
Good kid.
Alright, bud, I concede. You're too polite for me. Well, you've got your ticket. Interested in throwing in? You glanced around. This seemed like serious business. In response to your consideration, Kairos softened her competitive smile. Don't worry too much. We'll probably just do some rounds of Go Fish tonight. No biggie.
Do you mind?
What do you think? Sure. You set your jaw and nodded to her. Mr. Holden gave you a big thumbs up while Cove nodded firmly back. You left it all to luck. Card games are mostly about chance after all. Fantastic. We'll play for however long everyone wants to keep going. Or until people start running out of cash, but are still refusing to quit while they're behind. Speak for yourself, I see. With a laugh, Kyra nudged you using an elbow and motioned toward the other two with a chin. Don't be fooled by the soft faces. These boys are sharks. And after your words, Mr. Holden smirked, and Cove's eyebrows became more angled. Kyra's phrasing made you think back to when you were young, specifically of Mr. Holden's favorite shark pants he used to wear all the time. Perhaps they had been a fit for him in ways you didn't know of. You feel the tension in the air. Cove and his parents glued their eyes to one another, and all placed $5 bills in the empty space in front of him. Cove dropped an extra one for you, giving you a tiny smile after he did. Once it was done, Kyra began dealing out the cards for everybody. It was time to begin. First round came and went quickly as the group got into the groove of things. You lost! Which meant you didn't have any money to add to the pot for another game.
Very cute.
Hey, I'll vouch for you this next round, Viola. How generous, even though you lost your own bet already. Kyra stuck her finger in Mr. Holden's chest. So did you, hotshot. Cove was the one to claim the prize this round. He was quietly pleased with himself, while his parents jokingly ragged on each other. Kyra wasn't lying. The boys were sharks.
Okay.
I'll pay for it. Pass out another round. Fine. They answered in unison and got their heads back in the game. As the night went on, so did the games. Mr. Holden would jokingly shake his fist whenever someone other than him got a pair. Kyra acted like a news anchor, reporting on every move everyone made by speaking into her curled fist. Cove still said few words, but now it was because he was focused on the game instead of being overcome with awkwardness. Most of all, you still spotted a smile on his lips. You won quite a few games to your delight. You had a hefty pile of money on your side of the table. You must regret paying Viola's way in now, huh? No way. Viola might be beating me, but she's also beating you too. Cove turned toward you and smiled, looking pleased at your ability to match his mom and dad. You smiled at yourself, happy that your friend had your back. It became clear that where the money went the moment it didn't matter. They ended up giving it back to one another in other ways, and not just through more rounds of cards. You sat back looking at the scene, a tiny smile grew on your face. Cove's family was pretty cool, you thought. And you're glad you got this chance to come over and spend time with the three of them. Yay! Now, do I want to do road trip? I don't like road trips. You know what? Fuck yeah. USA! Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lighting by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. And instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was up to a flurry of activity as both your family and Cove's prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street just outside your house, was a massive RV camper, so big that you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents rented an RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. He glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had been a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, and it seemed like he was dealing with it as best he could. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Coves spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way planned. Oh my God, words! Why? You knew your parents and Coves spoke to each other often. And somewhere along the way, plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was a pretty big car, meaning that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water in another. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She fell behind her wife, dragging her feet with every step. I'm gonna need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. You're late to Ma. It was way too early. You yawned and rubbed your eyes, still sleepy from the early morning wake-up call. The air outside was still damp from dew, and that helped make you a bit more alert. Then, at the end of the chain, came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. She rattled off critiques, added some level of normalcy to everything new going on. I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Viola's the youngest, and I'll never fall asleep in the loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for their younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with that answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior, the sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held her objections to them. There was a main area of the RV with a couch, a loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed. Kara was on the couch, and father and son were sleeping on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing a bed with your moms. It was unfair that Cove had to sleep on the floor. After all, it was supposed to be a trip for him and his family before yours ended up coming along too. Now he had been kicked out of every bed like space and put on the floor. There had to be another way to organize things that would make it better for him. Sharing the loft with Cove. Cove and I can share the loft when I'm up there. I don't mind making room for him. You took a glance over at Cove. It'd be fun to have a little sleepover, just the two of you. No. That loft is too tiny for two people, even if those people are teens. Last thing we need is one of you rolling off and crushing poor Cliff beneath you. Who will take over his driving shifts? The three other parents all laughed at your mom's joke. Cove simply shrugged with a relaxed smile, and you sighed as you were forced to admit defeat. Alright, you lot. Does everyone have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes, so now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. At that word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back inside, her bedhead hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over to me with a smile, setting her hands on her hips. What about you, Viola? You have your clothes back, toiletries, deodorant, floss, anything else you can think of? gave her a flat look. You weren't 8 years old anymore. You were 13. And more than capable of remembering what to bring on a trip. Alright. I like to fuss. Ma laughed softly and ruffled your hair as she walked off. 2 minutes left to spare before you were leaving. You mentally went over what you packed for your trip. Clothes, a pillow, a blanket, usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also had more personal things, such as gaming console. The drive to Redwood National Park would take up an entire day one way, so you wanted to make sure you had a way to entertain yourself while traveling there and back. Camera. It was just a little pocket camera that you had gotten from your mom's, but you couldn't miss an opportunity to take some new snaps. And MP3. With so much time going to be spent driving in a car, you wanted to make sure that you'd be able to have some music to put on. And that was everything. Hey, let me take that for you, Viola. I'll store it in the RV. There's a few spots left it'll fill. You let Kyra take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kyra and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. They were finished packing their suitcases while your moms had gone to lock the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartment of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away together. Elizabeth skipped toward the RV, bag slung over her shoulder, and you were surprised that she seemed more optimistic with the whole ordeal now. Usually she wasn't one to exit the confines of her room unless it was for TV or food, or to leave her family behind to be with friends. You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 other people would be too much for her, but it was a nice surprise. You suppose any vacation would be better than no vacation in her mind. Cove had been pretty quiet so far, and more than anything, seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. You weren't very excited for the trip either. You liked being home, and would rather find things to do around your town. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks were all wrapped up. This is a nice RV, the fuck? I have I've been in one RV in my life. And this fucks it to death. Everyone piled into the RV. It was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift to driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was such a go for the first part of the journey. Your moms like Kyra were all huddled at the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on either side. It was such a relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit, and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out of the driver's area, leaving Cove's dad to it, taking the more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt you finally relaxed now too. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV had come to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff climbed out of the driver's seat and Mom took over. Mom was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial of the... Ma was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial of the controls, as it was the first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed toward the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. You're making good progress. Yeah, maybe you should take a nap in the back for a while. It was a long haul you just did, and I know you're on less sleep than usual. Cliff waved a hand, that trademark grin of his slipping into place. I don't need sleep. I still got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive the point on how resilient he was home, and Kyra rolled her eyes in amusement. Dad, everyone has to sleep. Cove shook his head at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair.
So,
Are we going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can be prepared. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was bouncing on Elizabeth's stomach. She tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kara laughed lightheartedly. Luckily for all of us, we have enough adults to cover the shifts today. We won't be driving again until tomorrow. There's no time to write my last will and testimony. Not his driving at word. Shook her head to the ribbing. He didn't have anything to add to the conversation, but it wasn't very funny. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join the conversation. A playful smile tilted her lips. What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back without falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s. It must be older than some of the occupants. It's just the aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old, I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kara wrinkled her nose at the thought.
hey!
Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her, while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. RV lurched a little as it picked up speed, and you held onto the ladder of the loft to keep your balance. You felt something raise the top of your head before a weight settled on your right hair. When you tilted your chin carefully to look up, you heard the rustling of a bag of chips and realized Elizabeth was resting at the end of your head. You gestured to the opening, silently offering to share a snack. Reaching up, you scooped up some chips. After that, the weight of the packet left your scalp. Carefully munched away as the conversation continued, and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by, with a group of you chatting, playing games, and passing time together before finally arriving at the park and setting up for the night. Mom was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You had all had dinner together while still driving. Some hours after you arrived at your destination and found a spot to park, and the rest of you stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were, and Cove had completely fallen asleep curled up in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kara was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kara herself was the only one up there that was still awake, looking through a magazine next to the portable light on her spot on the couch. You see, Mr. Holden needed to sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms out of the back room and closed the door behind you as you crawled onto the bed between them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing. Get a good rest, Viola. We've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow.
That's fantastic.
I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There will be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake for a little while longer while your moms whispered about the park and the forest in general. Sound of their voices in the background, eventually you nod off to sleep. The next morning, you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. You slept terribly. There hadn't been enough room for you to spread out or readjust your position. The mattress was uncomfortable. And it became hot with two other people next to you. Mom whined a bit about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for the spot to get ready, you had trouble finding your own space as the others were doing the same. Cove was perched at the top of the counter, brushing his hair and tugging up his lips with every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything, to the point where you stopped listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the look of the backpacks that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted anyone would be missing them. Well, anything would be missing from them. It didn't take much longer until you all exited the RV in a bushel and headed to the Redwood National Park. Wow. Cove had his head tilted up toward the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees had been considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person.
Come on.
Smile, you two. You spun around just enough for Kara to snap a picture of you and Cove together, before she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protest that she should just enjoy the moment. Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some information she had read about the park in a brochure. Ma listened happily while looking around and taking in all the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke at something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come into work here as a tour guide if you know so much about this place, Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought it might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. You're in a good mood. The air was fresh and clean, and it was nice to be outdoors with the people you loved most. You were certain that this was only the beginning of a great day. The adults decided on some casual nature walks, rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she fell into place between the two of you, and immediately you could tell by her expression she was going to say something taunting. I can't believe our families were actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove smiled at her, even if it was a little awkwardly. Continue walking along. Just watch. Next year, they'll be talking about their next new amazing idea. She put on a fake voice deeper than her own. We should just sell both houses and move in together. Think of how much we'd save on the mortgage. It's clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. I suppose he was used to it at this point. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family, just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting in mischief as she leered at you.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll be related. Legally, anyway. She said it as though she's an old gossipy lady. Maybe. I guess you and me could get married, Elizabeth. Fuck her up. What, me? Yeah, that way Viola could be my sister-in-law. That'd be fun. You'll just suck your tongue out at Cove. The very idea were ridiculous. We must unite our family ties to increase our pull in the community. Political marriage? It might be alright with you. And it's an agreement. Okay. Elizabeth poked her tongue out at both of you, giving you a sour look. She walked ahead, obviously not getting the responses she was looking for, and you and Cove swapped amused looks. The day continued, with plenty to see and experience. You picked a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said that would have to wait for another trip. There was a little stream during the walk that you sat beside and set out a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches, and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing what species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half a Cliff sandwich. You're glad you had to do it in the end. It was definitely a special experience, and one that you'll remember for a long time to come. You spelled out yourself, committing the sights and sounds to memory. Your group made it back to camp just as the sun was setting in the sky and the stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner. Then afterward, you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early, spend some time together while your parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have space to yourself after the cramped journey there. And while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. Hanging out with Cove. Guess we should figure out something to do. Okay, so purple is not his color. Because I'm looking at it and it's the green. Okay, first of all, it's like two different shades of purple that's going on. Not that big of a fan of that. But there's also the green that goes with it, and I don't think green and purple really go together, especially those shades. Not like I know too much about colors, okay? Don't get it wrong. I know jack about colors. And my eyes are like, oh. He took his hand on the sofa while Cove sat down on the other end, having his fingers against his knees. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I like wearing as few layers as possible. It's easier that way. I'd rather be cold than extra hot. It's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket. I love wearing layers. There's something about a lot of layers that makes me feel all snug and comfortable. Cove smiled lightly at you and nodded. I noticed. Change the subject. Conversation had run its course. Instead, you asked Cove about what else he would have liked to do at the park if he had more time there. The two of you ended up chatting about the various outdoors activities available. Kayaking, rock climbing, hiking, horseback riding, wildlife walks. Horseback riding. You know what? Real talk, I have 100% honest. I have done kayaking, horseback riding, and some hiking. And I didn't like any of them. I feel like wildlife walk would be okay. Rock climbing, I would die. I feel like out of all of them, wildlife walk. There are so many options to potentially choose from. You made an agreement that if one of you ever had the choice to come back here, you'd bring the other two. That way you could try it all together again. Your parents arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit and rest their legs. Elizabeth, who had heard the commotion, came out of the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final round to be sure nothing was left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be a need for us all to get up. Now it's time to check you hadn't left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you had all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your mom and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading to the back room, while you climbed up to the loft. Cove and his family got situated below in the previous set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over, but before you knew it, you'd be back to your own bed at home. You enjoyed it. It was short, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break to get away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. It didn't take long for the soft swords of Clift and Kyra to drift up to you. They were asleep now. You wondered if Cove was still awake and decided to poke your head out and loft to find out. You blinked through the dark. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove lying on his back, eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out as on his sleeping bag. He must have felt you watching him, because suddenly his eyes locked onto you. It was difficult to see much in the dim light, but you could make out his crooked smile on his face well enough. Wave at him. Cove waved back, still smiling at you through the dim light. Just trying to come over. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly start to sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved. He tried to go slow and froze up like a deer in headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Eventually he managed to maneuver around his dad's sleeping bag and make it to the ladder. And he hit the bottom rung, and he looked up at you and whispered, "What?" You went him to the loft. You want to come up? His eyes widened just so. You could tell because he had come to where you were. He glanced behind him quickly at his parents before turning back to you. Okay. He broke out into a grin and scooched back as far as you could, making space for Cove to crawl in. He was very tall, so it wasn't a great fit for him, but he managed to squeeze himself in. I understood how that felt, with the two of you being in the loft together. There's barely any room to move. You laid down next to each other at your sides, face to face. He got under the blanket a bit. One of his arms rested under his head comfortably. The other had nowhere to go, so it rested alongside his chest on the floor of the loft. Cove spoke to you softly. "So, what am I doing here?" "Sleep here instead of the floor." Cove raised an eyebrow, not expecting you to bring that topic up again. It's okay. You're still thinking of that? You don't have to worry about me that much, Viola, but thanks. It's okay. It isn't a big deal for both of us to be in the loft, right? Yeah, it's not some huge thing. We've shared a million times by now, and usually they're the ones encouraging us. Cove gestured in the direction of the parents, and you nodded in agreement. They had always tried to put you and Cove together ever since you were little. I wonder how much trouble we'll get in if we get caught. Not be nearly as much if we would have been in if Mom found out you stuck to my room that night at the start of summer. He winced at imagining it. I still can't believe I did that and did get caught. It was a very dramatic morning. You still picture his frantic escape in your mind's eye. You're kind of a troublemaker, aren't you, Cove?
I mean...
No, I don't think so. He trailed off as seemed to be lost in his own thoughts. Well, maybe sometimes. He smiled fondly at you, and you grinned triumphantly. You spent the rest of the night smushed up in a little loft together, whispering about your past memories and trying not to giggle too loud at the silly things you'd gotten up to together over the years. Recently the chatting trailed off, and you noticed Cove had drifted off to sleep. You followed soon after. You woke up the next morning with a rumble of the RV as it traveled for the long journey home. You noticed quickly that you weren't as warm as you were during the night, and when you checked next to you, Cove was gone. Lying sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the loft where he had gone. Maybe he slipped back to the spot on the floor during the night. However, you noticed him sitting on the couch quietly with his mom. His head hung in embarrassment. Oh, he got busted. The moment your movement gave you away, and Kyra suddenly looked up and caught your eye. He simply smiled amusedly at you. It was obvious what happened. Cove hadn't gotten away with it. They found him there in the loft, and then you woke up while he was trying to explain. You knew it was gonna be a long, long time before you lived this one down. If you ever did. Soon your moms and Elizabeth emerged from their rooms. They were stuff ready for a day of travel. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Cass suggested a few travel games, as she used to play with Cove when he was younger. And all you did was... and you all had a great time competing against one another. A little later in the day, you tried to talk to Cove about what happened in the loft, but he simply apologized and changed the subject. It's a bit too much for him to try speaking on, especially right now. You understood. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night. and you look forward to crawling into your own bed after the last few days away. Everyone else must have felt the same, because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV could wait until the morning. Once home again, you went straight to your room and dropped into your bed, shoes and all. Miss being near Cove. If you were basically living together for 3 days, it was nice. But you knew that it wouldn't be the last time you two would spend time together, and that thought comforted you. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow life is gonna go back to normal. I think they meant next episode, because I'm gonna end this one here. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you later.